what we're going to be doing first and foremost is truly doubling our entire Simchat Torah. The food, thank you, the food, the dancing, the joy, to be able to, and we'll talk about that soon, what we have to do in order to truly, really honor the souls and honor the living. Okay? And just to be clear about what I'm saying, when UJA back in the time were saying to leave an empty chair at the table for the Russian Jews who would not be able to be by a Seder, the Rebbe said, why would you do that? What are you doing for the Russian Jews? What are you doing for world Jewry? What are you doing for anyone by keeping an empty chair? Quite the contrary. Bring someone who would not have had a Seder to the Seder, and that's the way we empower and honor those that were then stuck behind the Iron Curtain. So too, in order to honor, to commemorate, and to keep alive those who were taken from us, those who are presently hostages, we're going to double our efforts of Simchat Torah, bring more people to the Hakafot, and by that way we will empower and remember those who were taken from us last Simchat Torah, and those that are still alive, may they be returned home speedily in our days. So before we get into Divrei Torah, I find a huge confusion going on with what took place on October 7th and what we, the Jewish people, have been suffering since then. And I say the Jewish people, and I want to specifically point out that we have with us Dr. Hector and his wife Aline Medina, who are not Jewish. And yet, this is not the suffering of just those that are Jewish. This is the suffering of anyone who believes that human beings carry God's image. And when we see human beings turning into monsters, then that is the suffering and pain of every single human being. And I want to thank you both for always supporting us and always being here with us. So let's talk about this, okay? Viktor Emily Franklin, an Australian neurologist, psychologist, philosopher, and Shoah survivor. I just want to share with you, I have stopped using the word Holocaust because I found out that Holocaust is a term that was placed upon us by a pope who referred to us as a burnt offering. We are no one's burnt offering. So I'm going to call it the Shoah. Okay? So, the Shoah survivor who came to him for a therapy session. He's sitting there, a survivor, talking to a survivor. And he tells Dr. Frankel, I lost my son in the Shoah, and I cannot live with the fact that even after I die, I will not be united with him. Frankel questioned this patient as to why he believes that even after he dies, in the afterlife, he won't be reunited with his son. Why? And he said to him like this, my son, murdered for no other reason than for being a Jew, became a kadosh. And thus was his soul elevated to heights of which I cannot fathom of obtaining in my own afterlife. Kadosh. For those of you who know, Rabbi Akiva prayed all his life to be able to reach that level of being a kadosh. And when his body was wrapped in a Sefer Torah and his students were crying, he was telling them, don't cry. I have prayed for this moment all my life. I want to share with you that I personally, more than once, heard the Rebbe cry when he told the story of Rabbi Yosef Cairo, the Bet Yosef, that lost the zechut to be a kadosh. Instead, he only got to write the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law that every single Jewish family uses. But that was a punishment because he was not meriting to be a kadosh, and I heard the Rebbe cry when he told the story. So I just want to share with you, when we talk about those who were taken from us, what we understand about them. I will share with you that when I went to the March of the Living with Federation, and after everyone walked away, they had to keep on moving from in Majdanek, the gas chamber, which is fully intact. I waited till everyone walked away. I climbed over the plexiglass and I had to touch the walls. Because this was not just a crematorium, a gas chamber that took the lives of Jews. This was a pathway of Kiddushim into the greatest heights. I had to spend a moment alone in that actual gas chamber, touch the walls and say Shema for those who became Kiddushim. Now, I want to talk to you about October 7th on the multifaceted levels of what October 7th is to us. I want to start with number one, those we lost. The Kiddushim. And for the clarity of truth, we must divide this in itself into three parts. There is the murder of civilians, for which there must be and I quote to you from the verse in Deuteronomy, to atone for the murder of this man who they, the murderers, did not allow to produce fruit. A verse from Egla Rufa. Those who were murdered at that Nova festival were people who were denied the right to bear fruit. And I don't just mean there were those who did have children that are still alive. I mean the fruit on every level. To see their children, to walk their grandchildren and great-grandchildren to the chuppah. And I also mean the children of which we say, Ma'asim Tovim, is the children of the righteous. I want to also talk about the level of finding comfort for our loss. And when I talk about this, I talk about my son murdered for no other reason than for being a Jew, became a kadosh, and thus was his soul elevated to heights of which I cannot fathom of obtaining in my own afterlife. Yes, we are talking about those who were wrongfully murdered for no other reason than they were Jewish. Our pain does not end, but we must be able to simultaneously find the comfort that they are right now in the holiest of places. I want to share with you, there is a third category that we must discuss when we talk about those that we lost. And that is our sons and daughters, our brothers and sisters of the IDF who have been killed in this war. Now, I want to be very clear for those who don't understand what the truth is. We, the Jewish people, in this war, have not suffered a single casualty of war. Were we to have fought this war the way every other democratic country, America, Great Britain, fight such wars, they do not place their own boys and girls in danger just to keep the ratio of casualties between civilians and terrorists at the low number, the unprecedented low ratio number that we, the Jewish people, do with our IDF. Understand that the boys and girls that we have lost would have been in double digits only were we to have taken the right and the freedom to behave no differently than the humane democratic world countries do. But we don't. We, the children of Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah and Rachel, do not take the luxury of just being humane. We live up to the divine image of putting ourselves in danger to bring down the casualties of civilians in the Gaza, in Lebanon. That's what we do, and that's why we have lost so many of our children, brothers, and sisters in this war. So please, my friends, say this out loud to everyone. There is no veteran cemetery that boasts, painfully boasts, the casualties of maintaining a divine image in war like we in Israel do. Our veterans' cemetery are not filled with casualties of war because we could have saved them if that's all we were trying to do. We have cemeteries filled with those who went knocking on doors to separate civilian from hostages and were blown to pieces, murdered by children wrapped in bombs, simply because even after we dropped notices, after we gave warnings, we still refused to blanket bomb the way other democratic, humane countries did. So to talk about those that were killed on October 7th without talking about all the soldiers that were lost for no other reason than trying to save those in Gaza would be a crime and an untruth. I also want to talk to you about the next category of what happened on October 7th, and that is the hostages. Now, for clarity and truth, we must divide this in itself into parts. Number one, we need to talk about the fact that our men and women and children that were taken and treated, God forbid, but so it was, like public animals. They were treated the way people would treat animals in a cruel hunting exposition. To quote one father, he said, "I find comfort in the fact of knowing that my son is dead, rather than having to know that he was taken hostage and what is being done to those hostages." That is part of October 7th. I also want to talk to you about something else. And I think that Jews throughout the world are dealing with this aftermath of October 7th. Global anti-Semitism. Now here is a fact, my dear friends. We, the Jewish people, desperately tell ourselves that there is no way that the humane democratic countries of the world allowed what happened to us in the Shoah to just happen and stand by. Rather, we so desperately convince ourselves that they didn't know. Were the public to know, there is no way that this would have gone on for so long. 6 million would have been lost. Another 3 million children. That would have never happened if the world would have seen and would have known. And we lived in that comfort that the world isn't going to let this happen to the Jewish people until October 8th. When their pictures, their videos, their reports, one that can't be labeled Israel propaganda because it didn't come from us. It came from them. It came from Hamas. When they publicized what they did, we can no more hide behind this notion. If the world would know, they would never let it happen. We are witnessing the world knowing and how the world is responding. And we are left with saying, Israel has no friends in the world. However, that would be the easy blanket statement. Let's be more realistic and let's break it down. What is going on with global anti-Semitism? So for the sake of clarity and truth, we must subdivide this dimension. Number one, students. Now, I can call students stupid. I can call the whole woke generation and then everyone. Guys, are you serious? These people are so synaptically unwell in their brain. But let's be a little bit more serious. You see, students yearn altruism. And the easiest altruism we can find is stick up for the underdog. And then along came Israel, along came an Air Force, along came true superpower country, our home, the land of Israel. We are a superpower on the global stage. And thus, what happened? Altruism says we need to fight for the underdog. In the Israel-Palestinian warfare, who is perceived as the underdog? Palestinians. Thus, the students took up the cause of the underdog because students are altruistic. They don't have a wife and kids. They want to just be altruistic. However, in the world of altruism, it isn't enough to stick up for the underdog. Those of you who have any education in the world of writing, you know that a story is not complete without a villain. And not even with the villain, the story is incomplete until we also have heroes. Thus, the students take to the street, burning flags, waving flags, screaming violence, because they're heroes in fighting the villain. And who is the villain? The villain is the superpower. Who is the victim? The victim is the underdog. And thus we have a generation of, yes, brains that do not have synaptic connections fully formed. And as you know, the ultimate statement of a student who's fighting in altruism and feels like a hero, what is their ultimate motto, my friends? Do you know? Don't confuse me with the facts, because I already got this all worked out. I found everything I'm looking for. I found the underdog, I found the villain, and I'm going out onto the street with violence to bring it down. That's what we're dealing with here. Another thing we're dealing with is the quiet majority. You see, I believe that the real matter here is the global silent majority who sits in absolute, I believe that they sit in absolute horror of what happened, of what is happening, but they're going to remain silent. Okay, people, let's get uncomfortable. Before we can talk about the Gentile silent majority, we're going to have to take a painful look into our mirror and see the Jewish silent majority. Because as you know, all it takes for bad people to prosper is for good people to remain silent. And before we can point the finger at the Gentile silent majority and ask, where are you? Where are you? We're going to have to ask ourselves, of the true 0.001% of the Jewish of the human race, the Jewish people, the majority of the Jewish people are sadly a silent majority. Then we have to face what's even more painful, which is the Jewish noisy minority who somehow didn't get the memo yet that Hitler and the likes have not even offered them a separate crematorium because they spoke out against their own. That is what we are dealing with in the aftermath of October 7th. A disgraceful Jewish minority who thinks attacking Israel and everything we do is going to bring any goodness to this world or to themselves. A silent Jewish majority, and then from there, the Gentile silent majority. And what we need to do for this is that we need to absolutely not be part of the Jewish silent majority. And what that means is our social media has to be filled with us speaking up about October 7th, the aftermath of October 7th, and what needs to be done. And as I posted today, dear world, don't get us wrong. This is not just about bring them home. It's about annihilating those who have sworn to do it again. That is what we need to post loudly. We need to, in conversations of our inner circle, how many of us have friends since October 7th who have taken a step back from us and who have taken loudly in conversations the other side. Do not hide your Judaism in those conversations. Do not hide your Zionism in those conversations. If someone makes a comment at a lunch table where you and your classmates, you and your co-workers, you and your potential customer make a statement about apartheid, I should hope you'll forego your deal and stand up for who you are and for who your brothers and sisters are. That is what is needed of us to deal with the global anti-Semitism that's taking place. And if you have all the reasons in the world, your parnasah, your safety, your everything, if you have all the reasons in the world to remain and become part of the infamous silent majority, then stop complaining about anti-Semitism. Being Jewish doesn't give you right to behave in an anti-Semitic way. And to remain silent is to behave in an anti-Semitic way. I want to talk to you about another dimension of October 7th, which I personally believe is the most important dimension of post-October 7th. And that is the security and safety of our homeland, the land of Israel, and of the land of Israel's children around the world. Europe, France, England, places here in America. We are suffering from that somehow this war went from the security and safety of our people to bring them home. Now, don't get me wrong. We need to do everything we can to bring them home. But please, be brave enough to say that that is number two. Number one is the safety of our people and of our land. You see, we have pictures, we have names, and when we post them and we make it about bring them home, we think that what we have now is a practical reality that you've got to agree with us Jews. No, and no. Our first and foremost message is never again. We have a right to our homeland, we have a right to exist, and we have a right to exist safely. That is the foremost war that was thrown upon us October 7th. The safety and security of our homeland and of its children around the world. Now, I want to say, what we have learned is that truly, at the deepest level, really, we have no allies. We have allies that will play with us, keep us in a place of need, will give you just what you need at the last moment. That's not a real ally. An ally is one that makes sure that we don't need them. We don't have such allies. Israel does not have such allies. The one and only ally we have is Hashem Echad. And let me tell you what this ally told us. And I quote, "He who comes to kill you, rise up and kill him first." That is what Israel has to do. This war cannot end until those who are sworn to annihilate us will be annihilated. That is exactly what we have to say publicly. I want to share with you how real this is. If Hamas and Hezbollah gather together all the hostages and send them home, we are coming after you to annihilate you after you send them home. Because we don't need the hostages to come home together with a vow that we're going to take them back again. We don't need to read the minds of our enemy. We have to stop thinking that what they're telling us is not what they're really thinking. So October 7th has taught us that there is no end to this war, while those who are sworn to annihilate us are still breathing. As the great general said, they desire a meeting with Allah, and it's our job to arrange for that meeting to happen. That is the only response to October 7th. And if you ask me, Rabbi, since when are Jews into annihilating anyone and anything? I'll tell you what. Change your sworn goal and we'll let you live. It's that simple. The ball is truly in your hand. The Israeli army is the only army on planet Earth that is called Defense Force. It is the only army in the world which prides itself to be dedicated only to defense. Never have we attacked for any other reason than to defend ourselves. So, my dear friends, the world has not let us be poetic, romantic. They have left us with only one choice: survive and thrive. And my dear friends, we have done that, and we will do it. So, my friends, we, as one people under one God, are to bring a oneness within a world of conflict and adversity. When we, Israel, serve as the frontal cortex of a higher conscious and the inner heart of divinity, precisely in how we combat with evil, the world at large is elevated and become the worthy domain of God is one. God, we have done this for you throughout the millenniums. May this be the final time, ushering in Mashiach and world peace. Amen.
Amen. Rabbi, I heard today that there's a part of the Torah that said,